We live in a time where we can detect the faint glow of ancient starlight stretching across billions of light years. Yet we find it difficult to sit still and reflect for even a few minutes without distraction. That is the great irony of modern civilization. As our instruments extend farther into the cosmos, our inner compass grows less stable. Our satellites perform orbital ballet with atomic precision, transmitting torrents of data across the globe. Yet down here, on the surface of our pale blue dot, emotional dissonance and cognitive fatigue have become the new baseline of human life. Isn't it curious that the species capable of decoding the cosmic microwave background still struggles to decode itself? And now, something unexpected is unfolding. In recent months, Earth's magnetic field experienced a disturbance so abrupt and intense that even our most advanced monitoring systems hesitated to interpret it. No solar flare, no visible coronal mass ejection, just a sudden, silent deviation in anomalous pulse in the planet's magnetic signature, almost as if the cosmos whispered in a dialect of physics we haven't yet fully translated. This isn't science fiction. This is science not yet explained. To most, it may seem like a mere blip in what we call space weather. But for scientists attuned to long-range pattern solar cycles, geomagnetic flux, atmospheric coupling, this was a deviation worthy of attention. Not because it was supernatural, but because it was unpredicted. And unpredicted phenomena in a universe of patterns, that's where real discovery begins. What's most compelling is not the storm itself, but how much it exposes the edges of our understanding. For all our instruments and equations, we still navigate the cosmos with models built from limited data. And the universe, in all its silent grandeur, has a habit of humbling us. It doesn't owe us predictability. It offers complexity, and every now and then, it sends a jolt through our certainty, reminding us that nature writes the rules, not us. We live in a time where we can detect the faint echo of starlight traveling across billions of light years, yet we struggle to spend a quiet moment alone with our own thoughts. That, in itself, is a cosmic irony. As our instruments extend their reach into the farthest corners of the universe, mapping exoplanets, decoding cosmic microwave relics, measuring the gravitational murmurs of colliding black hole-sir emotional architecture here on Earth, seems increasingly fragile. We've achieved a mastery of external systems while neglecting the internal ones. Our satellites maintain orbits with sub-millimeter precision, while our attention spans spiraling chaos. Our computers run simulations of supernovae, while many of us cannot simulate stillness for 10 uninterrupted minutes. That dissonance between outer progress and inner turbulence is not just psychological, it is symptomatic of something deeper, an evolutionary imbalance between what we know and how we live. And now, something unusual has occurred. Earth's magnetic field protective envelope, shaped by planetary spin and solar windex, experienced a sudden, unaccounted-for anomaly. No flare, no coronal mass ejection, no visible outburst from the sun to serve as a usual suspect. Just a quiet, sharp deviation in the geomagnetic recorders. If the cosmos exhaled through a language we've not yet learned to decipher. Some may dismiss it as space weather, a statistical outlier in a field of noise. But science thrives on outliers. Because when reality defies our predictions, it doesn't mean the universe is broken. It means our model is. And in that space between what we expect and what occurs, discovery happens. For all our scientific advances, we remain humbled by how much remains unmeasured, how many variables remain uncaptured. We live under the illusion that we've decoded the cosmos, when in fact we've only scratched the surface of its complexity. The laws of physics don't adjust to our confidence. They persist in silence, awaiting our maturity as observers. And this recent event, this strange magnetic ripple, was not merely an astronomical occurrence, it was a mirror. A mirror held up to the limitations of our understanding, to the arrogance of certainty, and to the thrilling reminder that the universe still has surprises left. There are theories, of course. Some suggest a stealth eruption from the far side of the sun, one that escaped our instruments like a cough caught between the frames of a time-lapse. Others postulate that the energy may not have come from our solar neighborhood at all. A burst from deep space, perhaps gamma radiation, interstellar flux, or an energetic pulse from a region of space we've yet to define. And while these ideas seem speculative, the speculation itself is a sign of progress. Because science doesn't grow by confirming what we already know, expands by confronting what we don't. The most compelling questions emerge not from certainty, but from anomaly. And this magnetic anomaly invites the most important question of all: what else might we be missing? Let's not drift into mysticism, nor retreat into reductionism. The mystery here does not lie in the stars alone, but in the intersection between cosmic motion and human experience. Because while Earth's magnetic field may be invisible, it is no less real. It wraps around us like an energetic exoskeleton, shielding us from radiation, guiding migratory life, interacting subtly with our biology. And we, too, are electromagnetic creatures. Your heart generates a field, your brain oscillates with charge, your entire nervous system is a symphony of electrical patterns, fluid, dynamic, and deeply sensitive to environmental change. When the planet trembles, it's not unreasonable to think that we might tremble too. You've likely felt it, perhaps without even knowing what it was. The sleep that no longer restores. The restlessness that arrives without cause. The spike of insight or sudden agitation, as if the mind received an unannounced transmission. These aren't metaphysical claims, they're physiological observations. Studies in chronobiology, biophysics, and geomagnetic sensitivity have already begun mapping the subtle dance between planetary forces and human rhythms. The connection is not imaginary, it's measurable. The Earth vibrates, and so do we. But here's where it becomes even more provocative. We tend to see ourselves as separate from nature, as if human experience is unfolding in a vacuum. But what if we are not merely reacting to these forces? What if we are participating in them? The magnetosphere is not just a shield, it's a dynamic, oscillating field influenced not only by solar winds, but by Earth's own resonances and, just maybe, by our collective state of consciousness. It sounds radical until you remember consciousness, like gravity or light, is a phenomenon we still barely understand. And in that gap of understanding lives a frontier worthy of exploration, not with superstition, but with curiosity. So, instead of asking whether this magnetic wave is good or bad, helpful or harmful, let us ask a more refined question. What does it reveal about us? Because all throughout nature, growth begins with disruption. Stars are born in collapse. Crystals form under pressure. Evolution favors adaptability, not comfort. And if this moment, this tremor in the planet's electromagnetic pulse signaling anything, it may be that something is shifting, not just out there in the cosmos, but in here, within us. Throughout history, the most profound shifts in human understanding have emerged not in times of ease, but in moments of disruption. The Renaissance rose from the intellectual ashes of the Dark Ages. The Enlightenment followed centuries of dogma and war. Every time our worldview has expanded, it has been preceded by instabilia, collapse of the known that creates space for the possible. Perhaps this is what we're sensing now. Not catastrophe, but recalibration. A global unease not as a symptom of decline, but as the early vibration of an evolutionary pivot. We often look to the skies for signs of progressed telescopes mapping galaxies, probes sent to other planets, sensors watching solar cycles, but the real leap may be unfolding in the human psyche itself. Not in what we build, but in how we think. The challenge is that transformation rarely feels like progress. It feels like discomfort. It feels like shedding skin, like a system under stress. Biology confirms this. In nature, growth isn't graceful, it's often violent, erratic, unpredictable. A forest fire appears destructive, but it clears the way for biodiversity. Cellular mutation sounds ominous, but it's also how adaptation happens. And at the level of human consciousness, discomfort may well be the signal that we are in transition. A transition not to a mythic destiny, but to a more integrated awareness of how deeply entangled we are with the planet, the cosmos, and each other. This brings us to a vital distinction. Are we here to survive change or to participate in it? Because there's a difference. To survive is reactive. To participate is conscious. If we view ourselves as isolated minds drifting in a sea of chaotic forces, then we become victims of waves we don't understand. But if we understand ourselves as part of the wave, then every thought, every choice, every act of attention becomes part of the pattern. That's not mysticism, that's systems theory. That's quantum observation. That's agency in a probabilistic universe. In a cosmos where observation alters outcome, the quality of our awareness is not decorative, it's causal. So what do we do with this awareness? We don't need to retreat into fantasy nor into fear. We ground ourselves scientifically, emotionally, ethically. We remember that for all the grandeur of the cosmos, we are not mere spectators. The carbon in our DNA was forged in stellar furnaces. The calcium in our bones, the iron in our blood, these are the ashes of stars that exploded billions of years before the Earth even formed. You don't just live in the universe, you are of it. You are a continuity of cosmic evolution, unfolding through biology, shaped by history, animated by inquiry. And now, in this strange, dissonant moment of global unrest and electromagnetic fluctuation, the question is no longer just what the universe is doing to us, but what we are doing within it. Throughout history, there have always been those who ventured to ask questions science hadn't yet learned how to frame. Some did so through mathematics and observation, others through philosophy or even subjective inquiry. Dolores Cannon was one such voice figure who, despite her non-traditional methods, raised a question that still lingers beneath the surface of modern consciousness. What if we are not just biological entities reacting to our environment, but expressions of something larger, something still unfolding through us? While her conclusions may not rest on peer-reviewed data, the appeal of her ideas reflects a widespread hunger for meaning, particularly in times of turbulence. And even if we choose to set aside the metaphysics, we are still left with the possibility that humans are evolving, not in the mythical sense of being rescued by cosmic energies, but in the grounded neurological and sociocultural sense of adaptive transformation. We know from physics that energy is never lost. It only changes form. The entire structure of the universe stars, matter, radiation, entropius, a symphony of transformation. And if we, as conscious beings, are immersed in this system, then we too are subject to its pulses. The question is not whether waves of light are descending from some ethereal source, but whether shifts in the electromagnetic environment, solar cycles, geomagnetic fields, atmospheric oscillations are influencing human biology, emotion, and cognition in ways we have only begun to understand. Neuroscience already recognizes that brain states are modulated by environmental rhythms. Biophysics confirms that heart rate variability aligns with geomagnetic stability. These are not fringe ideas. They're emerging intersections between physiology and planetary dynamics. So perhaps the question is not, what are these waves doing to us? But what are they revealing about us? If the field fluctuates and our systems respond through sleep, mood, intuition, then the field is not something external. It is something we are entangled with. We are not isolated observers. We are participants in a co-evolving relationship between the Earth, the Sun, and the human nervous system. This isn't mythology. This is the frontier of integrative science. And if it turns out that our capacity for attention, compassion, awareness, and coherence increases as we learn to align with these rhythms, then maybe the so-called preparation is not about being lifted by something outside of us, but about learning to stabilize what's already within us. Learning to self-regulate in an increasingly turbulent world. Learning to respond, not just react. Learning to embody a planetary intelligence that has perhaps been quietly building across generations of experience and discovery, the frontier we so often imagine as distant etched in starlight and redshift is in many ways closer than we think. Because while our telescopes peer into the past of galaxies and our probes sail toward distant moons, the most profound exploration may lie within the neural architecture of the human mind and the moral compass of our collective behavior. It's easy to scan for cosmic events, and catalog solar flares. But far more challenging to observe our Sylvesto, examine how we interpret, how we respond, how we make meaning in the face of disruption. The gravitational pull of distraction, fear, and emotional volatility has become so normalized that we forget awareness is a tool of navigation just as powerful as any spacecraft. And right now, as electromagnetic conditions around our planet shift in ways that are subtle but measurable, our task is not to flee from uncertainty, but to understand what kind of system we have become and what kind of system we are becoming. You don't need a belief system to feel the pressure. You only need to observe. Observe the fatigue that doesn't map to workload, the anxiety that doesn't trace to immediate cause, the strange polarity of insight and overwhelm, awakening and confusion. These aren't supernatural symptoms. They're indicators of a nervous system under novel stimuli that emerge from both environmental input and cultural saturation. We are simultaneously hyperconnected and emotionally disoriented, informed yet unmoored. And the more we push against this dissonance with distraction and denial, the more it persists. But when we pause long enough to feel it not interpret, but simply witness it, becomes a signal, a kind of biofeedback from the planet to the organism. A message without words, asking not for panic, but for recalibration. The notion that consciousness is separate from the cosmos is a byproduct of outdated thinking. We now understand that the atoms of your body were synthesized in stellar furnaces, that your breath contains the molecules exhaled by ancient trees, that your heartbeat is entrained by rhythms older than civilization itself. You are not above nature. You are a function of it. A node in the vast dynamic network of thermodynamics, biology, and cosmic inheritance. And when that network shifts, it is reasonable to ask how the signal propagates through you. Because if everything vibrates and physics tells us it does, then coherence is not just an aesthetic goal, but a physical state. A state in which systems align, entrain, and stabilize. This is not mysticism. This is wave mechanics. It is how pendulums synchronize, how birds flock, how neurons fire in harmonic resonance. And when that coherence is disrupted, whether by environmental change or internal dissonance entropy increases, chaos emerges. But within that chaos, patterns still attempt to form. That's how evolution works. That's how galaxies form. That's how human systems adapt. So the real question is not whether you can avoid the turbulence, but whether you can stay coherent inside it. In a universe where everything interacts from galaxies to neurons, your mental state is not isolated. It is part of the field. And when billions of people experience fear, agitation, or numbness simultaneously, it doesn't just affect society at the level of economics or politics, it affects the global atmosphere of thought. The cumulative emotional tone of a civilization is not merely psychological. It's energetic, behavioral, and systemically reinforcing. Think of it as a kind of social resonancy, a field effect, shaped by shared narratives, sensory overload, and unprocessed tension. And just as discordant frequencies in a musical system create noise, misaligned mental emotional states across populations create instability. The good news is, coherence can spread just as chaos can. In physics, this is called entrainment. In biology, it's called synchronization. In society, it's called leadership. The ability for one stable pattern to influence its environment is not magic, it's mechanics. So when you, as an individual, take responsibility for your attention, your nervous system, your thought hygiene, you're not just improving your quality of life, you're contributing to the stabilization of a much larger system. You're acting as a tuning fork. And in system science, one coherent signal can reorganize a chaotic environment, not by force, but by frequency. That's not a metaphor. That's how lasers work. That's how quantum coherence operates. That's how small shifts in local conditions can produce nonlinear change in complex systems. This is why personal regulation is not selfish, it's ecological. And responsibility in this context does not mean blame. It means responsibility. The capacity to respond intelligently to the conditions you inhabit. You are not just a consumer of reality. You are a participant in its unfolding. And every time you shift your internal state toward coherence, toward clarity, patience, inquiry, you are not merely raising your vibration, as some traditions might phrase it. You are modulating your input into the global signal. You are shaping the field. And if that sounds abstract, consider how humans have already shaped the planet climate, ecosystems, data networks, even the composition of the atmosphere, all because of small, repeated behaviors across time. Why would the energetic or emotional sphere be any different? Why would the field of human experience be exempt from the laws of feedback and emergence? It's not. Which means the future isn't something that just happens. It's something we participate in moment by moment, choice by choice, coherence by coherence. The myth of separation, the idea that humans stand apart from nature, that science is distinct from spirit, that individual actions are isolated from systemic consequences eroding under the weight of data, experience, and planetary feedback. We can no longer afford the luxury of pretending that we are spectators in a universe of cause and effect. The boundaries we once believed to be firm between self and other, thought and matter, Earth and cosmos are dissolving under the scrutiny of deeper observation. Quantum physics taught us that the observer is entangled with the observed. Ecology taught us that disruption in one niche ripples across the whole web. Neuroscience is revealing that even our most personal thoughts are shaped by social and environmental input. In short, you are not separate from the system. You are embedded in it. And that means responsibility is no longer optional, it's structural. You are not just surviving the system. You are shaping it through your language, through your intention, through how you respond to information, tension, opportunity. This is the architecture of stewardship, not in some grandiose, mythical way, but in the most practical, observable sense. You are a feedback loop inside a self-regulating planet. What you consume, you amplify. What you believe, you project. What you deny, you delay. And what you integrate, you transform. This isn't mystical law. It's behavioral ecology. It's cognitive science. It's cybernetics in motion. The energetic disruptions we're seeing, from solar turbulence to emotional volatility to institutional breakdown, are not signs of punishment. They are signs of transition. And transition is rarely graceful. It breaks things, it forces adaptation, it demands presence. This isn't about whether you believe in cosmic forces or higher frequencies. It's about whether you are willing to evolve in response to the data. Because every system, physical, biological, social, has a threshold. A point at which old structures can no longer hold new information. And when that point is reached, the system either collapses or reorganizes. We are standing at that threshold, now not metaphorically, but quite literally. Our economic models are straining, our climate systems are destabilizing, our information ecosystems are saturated, and amid this cascade of pressure points, the human nervous system is quietly being asked to do something it's never had to do before. Adapt not just to new tools, but to a new tempo of change itself. This is not a rehearsal. It's not a simulation. It's the real-time unfolding of a civilization learning, sometimes painfully, that it is not exempt from the very laws it studies. We've mastered mechanics. Now we must master meaning. We've conquered speed. Now we must cultivate coherence, because unless we learn to align our inner states with the complexity of our outer world, we will remain out of phase with the system we belong to. And systems that remain out of phase eventually fail. But systems that resynchronize across time, frequency, and intention don't just survive, they transform. If this truly is a moment of transformation, it helps to remember that human biology is not passive in the face of change. It is dynamic, adaptive, remarkably plastic. Your brain is not a static processor, it's a living network of 86 billion neurons, capable of rewiring itself in response to experience, environment, and even belief. Your DNA, once viewed as a fixed blueprint, is now understood as a responsive codates expression modulated by everything from stress to sunlight to social context. The pineal gland, nestled deep within your brain, has long been known for regulating circadian rhythms. Its sensitivity to light makes it a timekeeper for your biology, and while some speculate about more esoteric functions, what remains undeniable is this: Your body evolved to synchronize with natural cycles. You are wired to receive information from the environment, not just through eyes and ears, but through rhythms, pulses, and electromagnetic fields. This is not mysticism. It's chronobiology. It's neuroendocrinology. It's the science of how your body speaks in frequencies, how sleep cycles, hormone cascades, immune responses, and even mood are entrained by the world around you. When the magnetic field of Earth shifts, even subtly, it's not unreasonable to consider that your nervous system, already sensitive to changes in geomagnetic activity, might also shift, not because you're fragile, but because you are exquisitely sensitive. You evolved that way. Survival favored those who could attune to storms before they came, who could sense subtle changes in pressure, in tone, in direction. And in today's world, those evolutionary instincts are not gone. They're just overloaded by signals our ancestors never had to process. Constant noise, fragmented information, artificial rhythms. So when we talk about awakening, perhaps it's not about receiving downloads from the stars. Perhaps it's about removing the interferences, shedding outdated filters, quieting overstimulated circuits, and allowing the body's natural intelligence to come back online. Not through escape, but through integration, through rhythm, through attention, through coherence. Coherence, in this context, is not just an emotional buzzword, it's a measurable state of harmonization between the heart, brain, and breath. Research in neurocardiology shows that when your internal systems synchronize, performance improves, decision-making sharpens, emotional regulation stabilizes, immune function strengthens. This is not a spiritual idea. It's a physiological pattern. And the more coherent individuals you gather, the more coherent the collective field becomes. You don't need to invoke magic to be amazed. The fact that a thoughtened electrical impulse between neuron scan influence a cascade of biochemical reactions that change your immune response is astonishing enough. The fact that meditation can alter gene expression, that focused attention can reduce systemic inflammation, that gratitude, tracked on a brain scan, lights up regions associated with well-being. These are not fringe claims. They are peer-reviewed, replicated, and rigorously studied. Your biology is not resisting this moment. It's inviting you to participate in it. This moment, this confluence of planetary turbulence, emotional upheaval, and systemic reorganization is not just a phase, it's a hinge in history, a pivot point in the long, unpredictable story of a species learning to become aware of itself. We tend to view progress as linear, as something that moves forward predictably with time. But nature doesn't evolve in straight lines. It evolves in thresholds, in leaps, in tipping points. And right now, all signals suggest that we are approaching one. Our technologies are accelerating faster than our ethics. Our connectivity has outpaced our capacity for compassion. We've developed tools that reach the edge of the observable universe, yet many of us feel disoriented in our own lives. This isn't simply a mismatch between capacity and understanding, it's a crisis of coherence. We are immersed in complexity, but starved of meaning. And that's not a weakness of science, it's a challenge to expand how we apply it. Because knowledge without integration leads to fragmentation. Insight without responsibility leads to collapse. So what does it mean to wake up in this context? Not to some grand metaphysical truth, but to the observable, testable reality that we are embedded in a living system, and that system is reaching the limits of unsustainable behavior. Waking up means paying attention to patterns. It means asking better questions. It means recognizing that the micro, your thoughts, your choices, your rhythm scale, up into the macro. That how we treat each other, how we think about the future, how we structure attention itself matters. It's not enough to send rovers to Mars if we can't regulate our own nervous systems. It's not enough to sequence genomes if we can't break cycles of violence. Real progress is not the expansion of capacity alone, it's the alignment of intelligence with wisdom. And that alignment doesn't come through force, it comes through coherence, through clarity, through willingness to engage with complexity without retreating into denial or superstition. So yes, the wave is real. The energy is shifting not as some esoteric prophecy, but as a confluence of environmental, psychological, and systemic signals converging into a simple but profound truth. We must adapt, not just technologically, but biologically, emotionally, ethically. This is not a rehearsal. This is the arrival of a new kind of responsibility. Because consciousness, like light, behaves differently when observed. And now, more than ever, the universe is holding up a mirror not just to our scientific progress, but to our spiritual maturity. Not just to our capacity to measure space, but to our willingness to reflect inward. We are not just stardust. We are stardust that questions itself, that imagines, that chooses, and in those choices lies the power to transform not only our future, but our understanding of what it means to be fully, courageously awake. So here we are on a small planet, orbiting an ordinary star, in one spiral arm of a galaxy that is one of hundreds of billions in a universe that has no center and no edge. And yet, within this vast architecture of space and time, there exists the improbable phenomenon of you, of thought, of memory, of wonder. A species of primates conscious enough to question its own consciousness now stands at the intersection of crisis and opportunity, not because we are destined, but because we are capable. Not because we are chosen, but because we are awake. It is easy, almost comforting to believe that we are insignificant, that in the face of galaxies and gravitational waves, what we do doesn't matter. But the more we study the universe, the more that narrative dissolves, because this universe doesn't just create stars, it creates minds, it crafts observers, and in doing so, it begins to know itself. Your brain, made of atoms forged in stellar collapse, is now asking, what is my role? And the answer is not given. It is chosen. So choose to pay attention, choose to align, choose to live not just as a consumer of energy, but as a steward of it. The magnetic storms will continue, the data will fluctuate, the systems may tremble, but through it all, you remain a node in the cosmic web small, yes, but not powerless. The coherence you cultivate is not trivial. It ripples, it entrains, it shapes. And one day, when the next species of stargazers look back at this chapter in our evolution, this time of unrest and recalibration, perhaps they won't see it as an age of collapse. Perhaps they'll see it as the moment when humanity chose to become conscious, not just of the stars, but of the space within. Because the wave is not here to overwhelm you. It is here to remind you, scientifically, poetically, undeniably, that you belong to something vast, and that something vast is becoming aware of itself through you.